This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
And welcome to the Start Spreading the News program. Tonight, I'm flying solo. EJ Fagan unavailable, but he will be next week. I have to be honest. EJ's not available tonight, nor is Andy Singer. We were all on the Bronx Beat podcast last night. And the reason they're both not available is because, well, quite frankly, there's something more exciting than Yankee baseball going on tonight. The New Jersey Devils, the hockey team, are playing the New York Rangers in a Game 7. And EJ said, I have to be honest, I really want to watch that hockey game. It's more compelling right now than the Yankees. Winning does that. When you have a team that wins, it's compelling, it's fun, it's exciting. Heading into May, the Yankees are 15-14. They're not winning. Dating back to July 1st of last year, the Yankees have basically been a 500 team. Now, when fans get down on teams, oftentimes the critics of the critics say, you're talking about a small sample size. It was just April. There's plenty of time left. This is a marathon, not a sprint. But if you're talking about July and August and September and 6 games in October and now April, well, that's more than a half marathon. It's not a sprint anymore. We are not talking about a small sample size. We're talking about a significant sample size. We're talking about a Yankees team that has underperformed for a long, long time. They got off to that great start last year. And since then, they've been a thoroughly and absolutely, positively mediocre ball club. And why is that? Last night on the Bronx Beat podcast, EJ and Andy Singer and I discussed this in a variety of different ways. And some of the points I made and some of the points they made, of course, we're never going to all agree. And let's take a moment here first. Listen, this is baseball. It's just fun. You know, we're all Yankees fans. And in essence, we all want the same thing. We want the Yankees to win. We want the Yankees to be exciting. We want to turn on the games or go to the games in person and have fun. Right now, the Yankees aren't all that much fun. They really weren't fun from July 1st on last year, but we do have to take all of this with a grain of salt, right? And people are going to have differences of opinions, and that's half the fun too. I think player X is the greatest player in baseball history. Oh, no, I think it's player Y. Who was the greatest player in history? Was it Willie Mays? Was it Hank Aaron? Was it Ty Cobb? Was it the Babe? Breaking it down more, who was the greatest hitter of all time? Who was the greatest pitcher? Taking steroids out of it, Is it possible that Roger Clemens, if you look at his numbers, was the greatest pitcher of all time? People have made that claim. But conversely, people have made the claim that he wasn't even the best pitcher of his generation. You want to talk about a generation with all-time great pitchers. My goodness. Greg Maddux? You could argue that he belongs in the elite category. Absolutely. In that highest echelon. Pedro Martinez? Absolutely. Roger Clemens? Absolutely. Randy Johnson? Absolutely. I mean, and then think of the other guys who weren't quite at that level, but were dominant. Smoltz and Glavine and Messina and Schilling, Halladay, and guys like Kevin Brown, David Cohn. Holy cow. I mean, the 90s and into the 2000s and the late 80s, that era of pitching, my goodness. And how about the guys like Jimmy Key, who were really great for a period of time, Doc Gooden, Brett Saberhagen? I mean, there's a lot of great pitchers in that era. Amazing. So we can have reasonable disagreements about why the Yankees aren't that good and what the Yankees can do to get better. And are better days coming? And is this poor start not a reflection of where they ended last year? It's not a continuation. It's not July and August and September and April, 4 months. It's not 4 months. It's 1 month. It's just April. And the reason the Yankees were poor in April, or at least not very good, slightly better than 500, the reason for that was, who could have predicted this many injuries? Starting rotation, 5 guys. Montas, out. Severino, out. Rondon, out. Yikes. What team can win with only 2/5 of their starting rotation? Not many. Not the Yankees. Then you think of the other injuries. Josh Donaldson, your third baseman. Harrison Bader, your center fielder. Giancarlo Stanton, your DH. Tommy Kahnle in the bullpen. Lou Trevino in the bullpen. Jonathan Loaisiga in the bullpen. The argument being, and I can buy the argument, once those guys return, the Yankees are going to be fine. It's a reasonable argument. Here's the other thing about these arguments. I can make a point. Someone can disagree with my point, but none of us know. None of us know how this is going to turn out. None of us knew Franchi Cordero would start the season off and hit 5 million home runs in the first couple days. And none of us then knew that he would do nothing after that. None of us knew that Matt Carpenter was going to come out of nowhere last year and basically hit like Roy Hobbs for a month and then get injured. None of us knew that was going to happen, but it did. So we can speculate, we can guess, we can think about what might happen, but we don't really know. All we can do is base how we think the Yankees are going to do on how we view the game, how we view the decisions they've made, how we view the players on the roster, and how we view the management and their ability to fix the concerns that arise. One of the big points that was made last night was that EJ and Andy are very high on Jake Bauers. They feel that he's redesigned his swing and that once he's ready to play after crashing into the wall a couple of days ago, that he's really going to set the world on fire, that he might just be this year's Matt Carpenter. And boy, oh boy, I hope that happens. But consider me skeptical. Now, let me take a step back again. EJ and Andy know much more about breaking down swings and analytics and numbers and hard hit ball rate and exit velocity and launch angle and WOBA and all these other statistics. They can run circles around me when it comes to those other statistics. I look at baseball a little bit differently. I like statistics. I keep statistics. I read baseball cards, or I read baseball cards as a kid. I look on Baseball Reference all the time. There are certain statistics I look at. I don't really pay much attention to the predictor statistics, like launch angle or exit velocity, your batting average on balls in play, and things like that. I really look at the results. I have this belief this year that if he ever gets healthy again, and if he plays for 70 or more percent of the season, that at the end of the year, Giancarlo Stanton might have 10 or 11 or 12 of the 15 hardest hit balls in baseball. When he connects, he is going to connect, and it's going to be a hard hit. That's what Giancarlo Stanton does. I also have a sense that Giancarlo Stanton's going to hit under 235, and he may not even reach 20 home runs. In other words, I don't think he's going to be very productive. I think when he hits the ball, he'll hit it hard, but I don't think he's going to connect as often as people think. So I don't buy exit velocity necessarily. For years, Didi Gregorius had a low exit velocity, and he put up good numbers. Everybody said it was a fluke. He shouldn't be having numbers like this, but he was producing. And in the end, that's what I want. Now, I understand exit velocity can lead to better results, and 99 times out of 100, it probably does. I get it. But in the end, I'm going to look at whether the guy produced or not, especially over a long period. A guy like Giancarlo Stanton hasn't really produced, especially at the levels the Yankees have needed him to produce, for many years now. Didi Gregorius, for those first couple years he was a Yankee, did produce. But this idea that Jake Bauers has redesigned his swing and that he is now going to be the guy who's going to help the Yankees get to the next level, I'm sorry if I'm very skeptical. When I was in college in the late 1980s, my father used to cut out the newspaper articles from the New York papers. There was no internet back then. I had no way of getting Yankee news in the middle of Pennsylvania. So my dad would cut out the newspaper articles from the Star Ledger, from the Bergen Record. Sometimes he'd get his hands on a Daily News or a Post. He'd cut the articles out. He'd put them in an envelope, and he'd mail them to me. And a couple of times a week, I'd get an envelope with baseball articles, lots of Yankee news. And I remember reading always about the next great Yankee, how this guy has really put it together, and he's a can't-miss superstar. And then I remember most of them missed. Hensley Mullins, Dan Pasqua, on and on. And I remember the Yankees getting Tim Leary, and his first year or two, I'm not sure how many years he was a Yankee. Of course, I don't start going on Baseball Reference while I'm doing a podcast here. I don't think it's any fun for the audience to sit there and watch as I look up statistics, so it has to mostly come from my memory. But it was either his third year or his second year after he had performed not well at all. And I remember them saying in spring training, and this has now become basically a meme, right? Like this has become like, oh yeah, who's going to have the new pitch this year? But I remember how everybody was raving about Tim Leary and a new pitch. He has a better curveball or whatever it was. I think he then went out and lost something like 19 or 20 games that year. There's always this wonderful optimism about a player. He's redesigned his swing. He's figured it out. But most times, I'm sorry, it just doesn't happen. It doesn't come to fruition. Or if it does, it doesn't last. You know, Cinderella had a pumpkin and it turned into a coach, and her clothes turned into a gown, and she had a beautiful slippers. But it was all a mirage. It was all magic. And at midnight, it all turned back to what it was. Most often with these guys who the Yankees find, they may peak for a short period or maybe even a couple of months or maybe even a year, but it seems short-lived. I just pulled up Baseball Reference on my phone real quick because I wanted to look at like 2017 and just say some names about people the Yankees were so high on. Gary Sanchez, Starlin Castro, Matt Holliday. Oh boy, when he came in, boy, did he look great. Stronger than ever. Remember all that? Greg Bird, Clint Frazier, Tyler Wade. Remember how many people kept saying if Tyler Wade only got a shot? He hasn't gotten a shot yet. But if this guy played every day, he'd be a winning ball player. Tyler Austin, Rob Refsnyder, Mason Williams. Remember when he came up? Miguel Andujar. Dustin Fowler, unfortunately, also got injured, just like Jake Bauers did. But you remember how high people were on so many of those guys? Remember how high the Yankees were on Chris Gittens? Remember all the talk? Oh, the Yankees have this guy. He is a power hitter at AAA. If they could just call him up, he'd be the answer. Chris Gittens. Mike Ford. You know, Mike Ford has one of those great swings. What a profile. If this guy ever got a chance to play, Mike Ford would set the world on fire. Most of the times it doesn't happen. Most of the time, Robinson Cano being a true exception because nobody really predicted him as being a top prospect. But most of the time, the great players, the young kids who become great players were the young kids who were projected to become great players. Most of the times, the guys who you take a big chance on don't usually pan out. And the ones that do don't normally sustain it. It's not usually a formula that's going to get you a world championship by relying on long shots. Sometimes the long shot plays and wins, but most often it doesn't. On Start Spreading the News, we don't promote gambling at all. I get asked all the time by all these gambling sites, please put us on your site, put a banner up, we'll pay you, and we won't do it. I'm not a fan of gambling. Never have been. But there is a mentality that some people who gamble fall into. And I don't know if there's a name for it, but I'll call it the long shot paradox or the long shot enthusiasm or the long shot rush. If I bet, and I don't bet, but if I bet on Secretariat to win a race, Obviously, we're talking a long time ago, but if Secretariat were running with all Secretariat's accolades and I bet on Secretariat to win, I'll probably win. I don't know how much enjoyment I'd get out of that. I bet on the sure thing and the sure thing won. All right. Anything can happen in a race, and Secretariat won. Anything didn't happen in that race. The favorite won, and I picked it. If I go into work the next day, or if I'm talking to my friends and I say, yeah, I went to the track and I picked Secretariat to win, people aren't going to say, like, wow, you are so smart. You picked the horse that's the greatest horse of all time to win. Nobody's going to be impressed. But if I pick, I don't know, Dump Truck or some horse who has a name that doesn't sound fast, Broken Down 18-Wheeler, and Broken Down 18-Wheeler or Dump Truck or Stagnation or something, if that horse wins the race, oh boy, what a rush. That horse is going to pay a lot more to the winner than Secretariat would. It's a long shot. Secretariat might be 2-1 or something like that. Dump Truck would maybe be a 50-1 or a 75-1. So I put $2 down on Dump Truck and I make $150. Then I go into work the next day, or I'm talking to my friends and they're like, oh my goodness, there was this big horse race yesterday. And I start peeling off the dollars. Yep, I knew that Dump Truck was going to win. I bet on the long shot and it paid off. There's a rush in that. It's one reason people sometimes get addicted to gambling, because that's part of the rush. That's part of the enthusiasm. I think the Yankees, to a certain extent, have fallen into that trap. There's something exciting about finding Luke Voit and having him lead the league in home runs. Whoa! Luke Voit just led the league in home runs. Nobody predicted that. We did. We found him. He's Dump Truck coming in at 75-1. Matt Carpenter last year was Cement Mixer coming in at 82-1. And for a month performing like Superman, or Roy Hobbs as Superman. And what a rush. Franchi Cordero at the beginning of the year, all those home runs. If you can predict the long shot coming in, it makes you look like a genius. Jake Bauers. Nobody wanted Jake Bauers anymore, but we found him, and we redesigned his swing. And we've redesigned his swing so much that he is now going to dominate baseball. If it works, you look like a genius. If it doesn't, you sort of say, hey, we tried. We really worked with them. We're ready for the next guy. Unfortunately, so many of us get so excited about the prospect, the idea, this hope that Tyler Wade or Jake Bauers or Mike Ford or Chris Gittens are going to become some type of superstar. And then if we as fans or analysts or writers jump on that bandwagon, then we can say, oh, I predicted that a long time ago. I think it was 1983. It was the winter, and I was flipping the channels on my TV, maybe with the scanner bar thing back then when cable had a bar, like on a box and a little thing you pushed across. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I had a dial still. But somewhere on the dial, I found winter baseball in the Caribbean League. And I remember I saw a couple of games, and there was a player on one of the teams, a first baseman named Don Mattingly. And I remember he was doing great. Now, I then predicted to my friends and told everybody, this Mattingly guy who the Yankees have, he's going to be great. I've seen him. I know how great he is. And Mattingly became super great. He became one of the legends of our time till he hurt his back, of course. But by that point, for the people my age or around my age, like he had already attained mythological status, right? And I predicted it because I saw him hitting in winter ball in either 1982 or 1983. I probably saw 4 at-bats. Maybe I saw 10. I'm sure I didn't see a whole lot of them, but I saw him get a bunch of hits when I saw him play on cable TV somewhere in my house. I don't know what channel it was. I don't know where they were broadcasting from, but I remember Don Mattingly. And then I remember saying he's going to hit, and he did. And I remember being so proud of the fact that I knew so much about baseball and I predicted that before anybody else. I saw it. It was a lucky guess. That could have been anybody who got a couple of hits, and I would have then said, yep, he's going to be great. I predicted Dan Pasqua was going to be great. I really was high on Dan Pasqua. I thought Al Leiter was going to be the next great Yankee starter. I mean, I predicted a lot of things. Most of them have not come true. And I'm sorry if I'm not high on Jake Bauers right now because he's supposedly at 26 or 27 or 28 years old has redesigned his swing. And now he's going to become a really impactful player for the Yankees. If it happens, I would love to be wrong. I'd love to be wrong. I'm sorry, I just don't think it's going to happen. Yesterday, the Yankees got clobbered 15-2. And if we look at what the Yankees look like, I think we see what the problem is. It's something I've talked about a lot, and it is what the problem is. They didn't plan well for this year. I know the argument is that so many injuries happening at the same time would decimate any team. And the Yankees have dealt with the injuries and they're still over 500. That has to be a good indicator that things are going to get better and the Yankees are going to turn it around. All right, I'll buy all that. That's possible. My counter to that is it can't be a surprise that Luis Severino's hurt. He's always hurt. He pitched in 19 games last year. That was the most by far that he's ever pitched in any season since 2019. He was hurt in 2019. He was hurt in 2020. He was hurt in 2021. He was hurt in 2022. Even with pitching 19 games last year, he's on the DL for 2 months or the IL. The fact that he got hurt this year can't come as a surprise. It's the same reason I wouldn't ever sign Jacob deGrom. He's hurt all the time. And players that tend to get hurt don't tend to get mysteriously better. In fact, what tends to happen is they tend to get hurt more. That's what happens. So they can't be surprised. You can't say, well, we had 5 pitchers and it's a surprise that Severino was hurt. No. They knew the medicals on Frankie Montas. It's not a surprise he's hurt. He was hurt when they got him. So those can't be a surprise. I've talked about Harrison Bader a lot, and I know a lot of people are high on Harrison Bader. Look what he did in the playoffs, they say. Yeah, he was great in the playoffs. But when he was in the playoffs for the Cardinals in previous years, I think he was something like 3 for 22. He didn't hit, and he had no homers. So it's not like he had this ability or has this superhuman ability to rise up in the clutch moments. No, what's more likely is he rose up and overperformed. But the fact that the Yankees said he's our center fielder, maybe they really know something about him and he's going to be as great as everybody thinks he's going to be. All right, I'll buy it. But At the same time, they can't be surprised that he's hurt because he's hurt often. He's always hurt. I've shared this number before, but every single year of his career, and we'll have to discount 2020 because it wasn't a full season, he's played in fewer games each year than the year before. Every year he plays less. So the fact that he started this year injured can't be a surprise. You can't go like, I can't believe he got hurt. And when he comes back, it can't come as a surprise. I hope it doesn't happen, but it can't come as a surprise if he gets hurt again. It's more than likely that he gets hurt again because that's what his career has been. He doesn't stay on the field, and every year he stays on the field less. So you can't look at statistics and look at a guy and say over the last 5 years, he's a 300 hitter, so he's going to hit 300 this year. And at the same time say, well, his injury history doesn't mean anything. That's a statistic. A guy's injury history is a statistic. So if you look at his batting average, or you look at his on-base percentage, or you look at his home runs, or his doubles, or how many times he walks, or his caught stealing percentage, or anything, and you use that as a way to accurately predict what he might look like in the year or years to come, and that's what we all do. We look at numbers to determine how we think a player is going to perform. Well, one number that you have to also consider is how many games they play and how many games they miss. Are they more or less likely to be on the field the next year? And for Harrison Bader, as great as he might be, and I hope he's great, his history says he won't play in a lot of games. Now, I know the other argument. But when he plays, he can be a 3 or a 4 win player. Okay, great. But what's the plan for when he's not there? Who's going to play center field? That's where the Yankees mismanaged this whole thing. Because there is no backup plan. They never acquired a left fielder. Aaron Hicks has been terrible. And they never got a left fielder. So you have 3 outfield spots. You already lost one because you never acquired a true left fielder. You're going to hope that Aaron Hicks bounces back or that Oswaldo Cabrera can play left field. Or the craziest idea, which I rebelled against the first time I ever heard it, taking Aaron Judge and moving him from right field to left field so you can take Giancarlo Stanton, another guy who always is hurt. So it can't be a surprise when he's hurt again, and put him in right field because it's a little easier because it's a little smaller in Yankee Stadium. Aaron Judge is more athletic. We'll put him in left field. The whole thought process behind that makes no sense to me. Now, again, maybe I'm wrong. But right field and left field are different positions. Ask anyone who's ever played them at a competitive level. They're different positions. They're similar, but they're different. And when you're a superstar, like Aaron Judge is, you become a virtuoso at the position you're playing. Repetition over time. Millions of times, or hundreds of thousands, or tens of thousands of balls have been hit to Aaron Judge in right field. So he knows the angle off a right-handed hitter's bat, off a lefty hitter's bat. He knows where the walls are. He knows all of that because that's been his whole experience. Can he play left? Of course he can play left. But why would you take your virtuoso and take him out of the place where he's the best, especially to accommodate a guy who's really not all that athletic anymore and who's always hurt? So you're going to put Aaron Judge where he doesn't feel comfortable or he can't possibly be as good because he doesn't have that lifetime experience in left field, and put him there because we want Giancarlo Stanton to try to play the outfield. And if that doesn't work, if Stanton is hurt, we don't really have another plan except it's Aaron Hicks or Oswaldo Cabrera or one of those guys we picked up in January that no other team wanted. The Willie Calhouns and the Franchi Corderos. I think they got him as spring training ended, but you get the idea. You find somebody on the waiver wire or whatever, and you're like, yeah, well, try that out. Jake Bowers, whomever. So they never addressed left field. You're supposed to have 3 outfielders. They went into the season really with 2. And then Bader gets hurt, and now you have only 1. So in that game yesterday, when the Yankees lost 15-2, you had Oswaldo Cabrera, who was put in the outfield at the major league level, never played outfield in the minor leagues. They made him an outfielder last year, and he's done well. I'm not going to argue that he hasn't looked good in the outfield at times. I think he's also not looked good at times, but looks like he can do it. You have an infielder who never played outfield at the big league level until last year as a young kid in the major leagues for the first time. Does that make sense? He was playing right field. Your center fielder was Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who was a Gold Glove third baseman who the Yankees tried to make an everyday shortstop, which didn't really work. So now they have him and they don't know what to do with him. So they decided to make him an outfielder. So you have 2 infielders, 2 lifelong infielders, guys who spent their entire careers playing infield, now trying to figure out outfield at the major league level. At third base, you had Oswald Peraza. Guess how many games Oswald Peraza has played at third base through his minor league career? 0. So now they're trying to have a guy play third base who's never played third base as a professional. And the place to let him try is at the major league level because they have no depth. They don't have a plan. Last year, it became apparent that it was going to be Peraza or Volpe who was going to be the shortstop. At that point, the Yankees should have said organizationally and internally, that guy, and I don't care if it's Volpe or Peraza, is the guy who we're going to groom to be the shortstop. So rather than having them both duke it out and giving them both only experiences at shortstop, let's take the other guy and figure out, because we're high on both of them, where he can play. Let's give him hundreds and thousands of repetitions at that other spot. So when we bring him up, he'll be ready. He'll have experience. He'll have some comfort there. Did the Yankees do that? No. They're saying, Peraza, let's try you now at third base. Volpe's doing great at short. We didn't really ever think of you playing anywhere else, but we have no other alternatives. So why don't you play third base today? Is the major leagues the place to experiment by taking players and putting them out of position? Is that the place you should be experimenting with your players? I don't think so. To me, that makes no sense. So this is where the Yankees are. Stanton will come back, hopefully. I don't think he's an impact player. Bader will come back. I don't know if he's an impact player. I suspect both, based only upon their body of work and their statistics, will get hurt again and miss more time. And the Yankees still don't seem to have an answer for who replaces them. Luis Severino's going to come back. I'm not confident he can pitch every 5th day for the rest of the season. I'm not confident in that at all. Why? Not because he's not good. He's great. Why? Because he's been hurt so much. So this is where the Yankees are. They have us hoping that infielder Oswaldo Cabrera can suddenly become a great outfielder. He hasn't shown he can hit. He never really hit much in the minor leagues either. If you look at his numbers, go look at his numbers, look at his minor league numbers and say to yourself, is this a guy who I'm predicting to be great? Go look at Derek Jeter's numbers in the minor leagues. They got better and better and better. Oswaldo Cabrera hasn't really hit in the minor leagues, and he's not hitting in the major leagues. Love his enthusiasm, love his fire, but I don't know if he's really a Major League Baseball player, but we have to hope he is because at this point, there's no other option. We have to hope Oswald Peraza can play third base. We don't know if he can. They're going to try it out at the major league level. This is where the Yankees' flaws are. They didn't look. They never got enough outfielders. There's only one lefty hitter in the lineup, legitimate lefty. That's Rizzo. The Yankees have always won with great lefty power hitters. How can you continually build a team without great lefty hitting? I don't understand how, and I don't understand why they keep trying. And I've said this before, and this will be my last point. I'm glad the Yankees re-signed Aaron Judge. He deserves every penny. I wouldn't mind if they paid him double. But once the Yankees decided to pay Aaron Judge $40 million a year, at that same time, because they have so many other big salary commitments like Garrett Cole and Josh Donaldson, Giancarlo Stanton, on and on and on, they couldn't re-sign him and look at the roster and the needs and then say we also have to stay under a certain luxury cap threshold. My worry is that Aaron Judge becomes to the Yankees what A-Rod was to the Texas Rangers. So much salary invested in one player, and if you're unwilling or unable to address your other needs because you're paying so much money here, you're not going to have a great team around him. And I think that's where the Yankees are. Well, let's try to figure out the other positions. We don't want to spend that kind of money because we're paying Aaron Judge so much. Once you made that commitment to Judge, you have to say, we still have to get the other pieces regardless of cost. They're not going to come cheap. But winning is more fun than losing. And people are watching the Devils and the Rangers tonight because they're in the playoffs and they're winning and they're exciting. I don't think this Yankee team is constituted as going to the playoffs. And the Yankees always say that we're a World Series team. Our goal is the World Series. That's our ultimate goal. We need to get to the World Series and win the World Series. Well, they haven't done that since 2009. They've lost an entire generation of kids growing up who've never seen the Yankees win a World Series. And they haven't won a World Series before that, or they hadn't, until 2001. So one World Championship, or since 2000, excuse me, in 24 years? Is that enough? For the team that says we're the winningest franchise, we define ourselves by how many championships we win? I don't think so. And I don't think it's getting better. And I have this big fear that someday we're going to look back at Aaron Judge's career and we're going to say it was a nice career. He really was super. He had some big seasons. But they never won because they never built a winning team around him. And then that will be the thing we remember about Aaron Judge. We remember Mickey Mantle being great, but we remember pennants. We remember Joe DiMaggio being great, but we remember pennants. We remember Reggie being great, but we remember pennants. We remember Jeter being great, but we remember pennants. We don't remember Dave Winfield being great because there were no World Series pennants. The sad story about Don Mattingly is they never won with him. The sad story about Mel Stottlemyre is they never won with him. And I have this terrible feeling that 10 years from now, we're going to look back and say, it was fun rooting for Judge, but they didn't win. Judge was a great Yankee, but he was a great Yankee without a ring. That's the path they're on right now. Because they didn't plan this thing out. For whatever reason, whether they thought they could pick the long shots who would always come in, or because they wanted to keep costs at a certain level, or they judged this whole thing wrong, or they discounted the injuries, or whatever it was. They're in a bad spot right now, and I don't necessarily see a path out, because the path out is to count on Severino, Bader, and Stanton. And none of those guys have a history that says they're going to be able to stay on the field the rest of the year. Those are the guys who are supposed to solidify, be the bedrock that the comeback is based on. I don't see it happening. And as I like to say, I hope I'm wrong. If you haven't yet picked up your copy of From Compton to the Bronx, Roy White was a great Yankee, and he played on some bad teams, and he was there for the glory years at the end. The people who are reading this are giving it such great feedback. And I can tell you personally that there are very few human beings, let alone former baseball players, who are as decent and as wonderful and as kind as Roy White. If you haven't read his book yet, pick a copy of this book up right now, written with me. And if you live in the New Jersey area, go to Start Spreading the News, and there's a little banner up there. It says Paul Semendinger's appearances. I'm going to be talking about that book and my other Yankees book at so many different locations. The least among them is the other one. What Yankee history is in here? Oh, my goodness. You'll learn a lot about Yankees history if you read this book. But click on that banner and you'll have a chance to talk baseball with me. I'd love that. I love meeting people and talking baseball and having these discussions. This week on May the 4th, I'll be in the Allendale Public Library. That list is updated often as I have events planned and guaranteed. Once they are official, I put them on there. If you haven't read Impossible is an Illusion, my book of motivational essays, you really should. There's baseball stories in here because I write about baseball a lot, but there's other great motivation. And my wonderful novel, Scattering the Ashes, will make you cry. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you love. It'll make you appreciate. This is the great American novel. Maybe people don't realize it yet, but if you read it, you'll be one who does. And if you know a movie producer, tell them to read this book and make this into a movie. You want to talk about a movie that'll make people happy and sad and have a great experience? I'm telling you, if you haven't read Scattering the Ashes, it's a story of faith. It's a story of love. It's a story of family. It's a story of God. It's a story of baseball. It's a story of running marathons. This is a great book. And I'm also proud to say that I am also published in this wonderful book put out by Sabre. It's a thick one. It's about Yankee Stadium. I've contributed 2 different chapters to this wonderful Yankees Stadium book. Take a look. Go get these books. You'll be glad you did. And please stop in it. Start spreading the news often. We put out millions of articles every day. All right, maybe 3 or 4. But every day we put out an article at 6 a.m., 10 a.m., 2 p.m., and then we do the games. And after the game, we have a quick hit. The next day we have a game summary. We have podcasts like this one. We have podcasts like EJ's Bronx Beat podcast. We have analysis. We just sometimes have simple stuff like Peanuts cartoons or photographs. Sometimes we have other different types of articles, baseball history, Yankees history. Sometimes we have the permission from the Internet Baseball Writers Association to put up some of their articles. It's all great. Start spreading the news. Thanks for watching. You can find our email at Start Spreading the News. If you disagree, if you want to debate any of these things, send me a message. It's all in good fun. Because in the end, we just want the Yankees to win. I love the Yankees. If I didn't, I wouldn't invest hours every single day of my life, ever since I was 9, thinking about the Yankees and writing about the Yankees and talking about the Yankees and watching the Yankees. I love the Yankees. I wish that my outlook on the 2023 Yankees and going beyond was a lot brighter. But maybe if they start winning, maybe they'll make it bright. Who knows? Let's go, Yankees. Thanks for watching. Make sure you have yourself a happy day. And I'll see you again pre-recorded because this weekend I'll be running the Pittsburgh Marathon. But I'll see you again Saturday morning for the Dr. Sem Show. Have